Yeah, hello. We are recording now. This is meeting number 28 of the Visual Tools group, and it is another meeting in this short series we have now of workflow demos where people of the Clojure community share their workflow, teach each other, help each other with, the way we use different tools to develop. And today we have three speakers who will present themselves in a moment. And yeah, we are 15 people now, and thank you everybody for joining. And so, Mike, is it okay? Would you like to say something about yourself, about your topic for today?
Sure. My name is Mike. I'm originally from Ukraine, now staying in Portugal. I've been a Clojure programmer for 4 or 5 years, and I do it in Emacs. And I enjoy merging the two. And so what I'm going to try to show today is using some of the great REPL-driven development tools for Clojure from Emacs. So I can start, I guess.
Yeah, thank you so much. And Tamas, would you like to say something about yourself, about the topic you'll present later?
Well, I guess I have more detailed introduction as part of the talk, but I'm working with Mike these days for the past month or two. I've started Clojure about 10 years ago, and I started programming since 6. So I did a lot of programming languages, embedded systems, non-embedded systems, all sorts of stuff. And I will show some of the enhancements like workflow additions we made for Cursive to kind of make the workflow smoother, have less keystrokes and less context switches while we are working on implementation and test code, and also show a bit of the built-in structural navigation and editing capabilities, because I think it's an interesting selection. That's it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, and John, if you wish, would you like to say something about yourself, just in case there is anybody in the world who doesn't know you yet, and yeah, and about your topic and so on. Thanks. Oh, you're on mute.
Hi there. Yeah, I'm sure there's a few people that haven't heard of me before. Hi, I'm Johnny. I founded Practicalli, which is a resource to help people learn Clojure, but also like some more general software engineering techniques as well. I've been doing Clojure as a hobby since about 2010 and commercially since 2017. And before that, doing lots of Java. So I've always been in the kind of JVM world. And later on, I'll be doing a demo of Neovim and Conjure to like show how to do REPL-driven development with those tools. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Yeah, so we will begin with Mike's presentation.
I was actually glad I'm going first before Tamas because I know how good he is with Cursive. Now I'm really glad I'm going first.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So can you see the screen? Why is it split?
Yes.
Could you make the font a bit bigger if it's gonna be that one?
Yeah, I don't have it bound. I remade my Emacs config recently, so this is a pretty fresh config. So what I'm going to be showing today is pretty basic for my workflow, and I think it's very convenient. And I'm going to be using this project that I have, which is a Sanskrit dictionary, web Sanskrit dictionary. It's quite small, but it's a real project, which is more interesting than just some toy code. And you can also see whatever I'm pressing, you can see here.
Mike, if you zoom in the whole environment, that's better because the menu is still small. You can do it with Control X, Control Meta plus. So reset back the text scale first and then.
Control X.
Control X and Control Meta plus.
Control Meta plus. No, it doesn't do anything. But anyway.
Oh, sorry, equal, not plus, as in the equal sign.
Control X, Control Meta, equal.
Well, this is still plus anyway.
Yeah, like this. But this does just the text scale adjust, same thing.
No, it should do the whole. No, you are pressing Control plus, not Control Meta. Anyway.
Well, you can tell me the name of the command. I'll press it for you.
I think it's global text adjust.
So it's, you want to increase the frame size rather than the text size?
No, the mini buffer part also, not just the text. It's called global text scale, I think. Yeah, global text scale adjust. Or Control Meta 0.
Anyway, what I wanted to show here is that I have these 4 tools that I'm going to be using. One of them is called Snitch, and the other one is clj-reload. Clj-reload, you probably know. It's a kind of improved version of Clojure tools namespace. It reloads the entire project based on the changes, keeping the def ones, definitions, etc. I use it in combination with Snitch. Snitch is a tool that basically instruments the local variables into a global context whenever you need. Portal is more famous, is a tool for viewing stuff in a separate viewer, data viewer, and HashP is a pretty printer for Clojure that you can use basically anywhere. So if you go into the user CLJ, and here are the things that you need. So as you know, user CLJ is a file that is loaded first whenever you jack in, and then that makes all these tools available already. So if you play with HashP first, if you do something like this.
Sorry, can you try global text scale adjust again? It's really small and it's hard to see. Yeah, that one, and then just hit plus some more times now.
Better?
Yeah, you can just hit plus once you hit it once, and you can just like, you know, adjust it. Use plus. Yeah.
Is it better?
Yeah, it's better now.
Excellent, thank you. So HashP prints whatever you put the reader macro before into the CIDER repo. And what Snitch does is whenever you have a local binding, so if you run it like this, you get, and this is part of your code. What you can do, and I have a special menu for that, which is a tools menu. So I can require Snitch, which is just a normal standard require. And then you can use, instead of the normal let form, you can use asterisk let form. And when you do it like this instruments the var into this namespace. So when you have a complex, any complex expression, and then you can say that var is in foo, and you run this, then you have both of them ready for inspection as normal global variables. And this is very convenient by itself, but the problem that you have with that, if you play with it for a while, then your namespace becomes polluted with all these global variables that might interfere with what you do, and when you run the functions again. And that's actually where the clj-reload comes in. So I also have it on a special command. Here I can do reload namespaces, which just runs this function reload. And once I do that, well, probably, I don't know, probably doesn't work in the user CLJ, but it reloads the thing. I also have another tool for Emacs, which lets me mark the functions in user CLJ as interactive, kind of the same way as you do in Emacs. And then I have a separate menu that you can see on the bottom that just shows all these functions and lets you run them. So if portal is not there, but if I mark it as interactive, and eval the namespace, and then it's already here. So this is a nice tool that I came up with last week, and I think it's quite convenient.
Is it scanning all loaded namespaces or just the
No,
current
it's
one?
only for user, but there is nothing stopping you from making that scan all loaded namespace. My approach is that I use the user CLJ as the basis for implementing commands that I use during development. So like starting portal and reloading, stuff like that. So normally when it's a larger project and you have an integrant, I normally use integrant. So we have an integrant system initialization. I would have start here, but actually we can do it as well. Because I have the, so this is how the website starts. It's very basic, so it doesn't use anything, no integrant, nothing. But basically, I could make a command, which would be start, or restart, which is more useful. And then let's just wait. The zoom menus. So you can see it's loading the dictionaries now. This is quite a heavy, it does it only once, but it needs all the Sanskrit dictionaries loaded into RAM to work. But now we can do the start command, which would be just site main or site stop server first. I don't know if it's going to work, but we'll try. And then now I have this command and I do restart, and it probably worked. And this is how it looks. Yeah, here. So this is a dictionary. If you type word, you get, we need to select a dictionary, and then you get the translation. It automatically figures out if it's Devanagari or Latin and does this translation. And you can select multiple dictionaries.
I only see a black rectangle on the right side. Where are we supposed to see something?
It's my
Same
browser
for me.
window.
Is it just me?
Is it better now? Did something change?
No, I think maybe you just shared the screen with the Emacs window, and that's probably why, or I don't know.
But you also just see a black rectangle on the right side, right?
Yeah, it was the same for me.
Now, yeah. It's still the right side is black, but the dictionary is visible at least now.
This side is black.
Yeah.
I'll put a screenshot.
Yeah. So I don't know why is it splitting the window like that. It's as if something is there.
But maybe it is okay. It is okay because we see Emacs and we see the dictionary.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to show, like very briefly, a practical way of looking at it is if we go into the code for the website. So this dictionary selector, it splits the dictionaries by language direction. So from Sanskrit to English to French, etc. But in fact, if we look at the dictionaries themselves, where do we do it? Yeah, they're actually special dictionaries. So this specialized for example, is not actually a dictionary, it's an encyclopedia, but it's still showing as a dictionary, which is not convenient for the user. So I got a request from some users to split them into a separate section. And what I normally do And this has a very like very straightforward implementation. It's only one body function, and all of that goes here, and it produces the view. So these dictionaries are here grouped by name, grouped by direction, and I want to look at it. So now that I have the snitch required, I can re-evaluate with the snitch, and then I reload the page. And then already in Emacs, I can see the requests and everything that's going on with this function, with the handler. So I can look at the dictionaries. Okay, I see these are selected dictionaries, etc. And then I can look at the part that does the grouping. This is really small. Yeah, group by. So this is the group. This is how the dictionaries are grouped now. So since all of this is instrumented, sometimes when you have nested forms, it doesn't instrument the let. But this you can fix that with adding the special macro for the let. Then we can see that the group dictionaries look like this. So it's Sanskrit, English, code. So this is how it's split into these directions. So I think this is very convenient for working, especially with web development, but probably not only, because you can take these parts and just play with them and look at these things. And then if you change something and then you want to go back to what to clean it out, you can just run reload, and then if you look at it now this is unbound. So this combination of snitch and clj-reload is what makes this approach really powerful, because when you only use the snitch, then it gets dirty really quickly. But with the reload functionality, you can really quickly clear it up and just have again your normal state of the program. And then what it does, what I did notice though, when you clean it up, let's see. Yeah, it's still unbound, even though I re-eval the namespace. But if I restart and re-eval, I didn't look into why it does it like that. So it's just an observation. Yeah, sometimes even after restarting now, it doesn't go back to implementing it. Well, I also have an Emacs command to remove all the snitch special forms from the namespace. So if I do remove snitch, it finds all the let asterisk and defen asterisk forms, and yeah, removes them from the code.
It just search and replace.
Yeah. Well, it's like an automated search and replace for all the special snitch functions, for the let, for def method, for defen, etc., etc. Well, another thing that I use is Portal, which is gonna be really awkward with this screen setup right now, but we'll try. What I like to do, it's not done here, but you can easily imagine doing that as a middleware. So I add a middleware that just taps every request and response. Okay. This thing is working when you're demoing. Yeah, okay. I wonder why.
I think it's because you reloaded the namespace.
Yeah, but the tab still works. It's like as if it has another version of the body function. Okay, it stopped. Okay, now it works. I don't know why. So Portal has a really nice viewer for the requests, for the standard ring request. And this, what I normally do in a larger project, I have a separate portal for tabs that I do manually, and a separate portal for all the requests that are coming in, and requests and responses. So every time a user does a request, you can see the request, you can go into it and see the params that were coming in. You can also compare, because these params are already parsed, but you can see the original params. So these were query params. So this is how they went in, this is how they were parsed. And so you can play with it really nicely, especially when it's when it's a middleware. Again, during this demo, I don't know why it's not happening. The portal has a special like condensed view for this as a request. So maybe a request. No, it doesn't recognize it as a request now. But when it does, it's like one liner that you can expand, and it shows you on the top. It shows you the request method and the path that the request is coming to, which is easier. So you just, when the app is running, you just have one by one requests appearing there, and you can just follow that without using logs and stuff like that. And then again, you can combine when it works, you can combine Snitch with portal to just tap stuff. Yeah. So whatever you're using, I have a special command for tapping, and then the open is true, and then yeah. So dicts are this. So this is a nice touch because it gives you a history of what you've been doing. So you can look at the evolution of the forms that you've been working with, how you're changing them. And it actually also has, I haven't played with it on this project, but it actually has a hiccup render. Let's see. This is just body, so in just the body. Well, if you pass some hiccup to it, you can also choose to render it as hiccup, which gives you kind of like a nice rendering. So you can, it's not gonna show your CSS obviously, but it's still gonna show you the overall view of what you're returning. And when you're working with stuff like HTMX or on Poly, when you're returning fractions of HTML page, that is also very convenient to look at. So yeah, these are yeah, and HP, I mentioned it in the beginning. You can also do the same thing with it, and like we do with the tab. So you can put it somewhere in your code, just like this. And then whenever a user does a request, it gets pre-printed to the repo. So this combination of tools depends on how hard the debugging problem, because I mostly use this with debugging or changing things, how hard the problem is. If it's like really simple, you might just print it to the repo when you just want to see what's going on, or set up an automatic portal tab that just taps this type of thing into the portal. If it's harder, then I tend to connect Snitch and then try to interactively change the code, use the parts of the code, and see how that affects the app. And that's basically the flow for these tools. So yeah, I don't want to take any more of your time. So if you have questions, then I'll be glad to answer.
Yeah, there were some good questions on the chat. I'm also interested. The Lisp implementation of these commands you were showing.
Which ones? Let me.
I'm interested in the transient menu that you have with like your quick commands.
This one.
Yes.
Sure.
Maybe also if you have your config on GitHub, maybe you can share that. That would be awesome.
I always think about doing that and never. Yeah, here's this. I have a package called context transient PL. Yeah, this one. So I made this as a helper to make transients like this, and they're especially good for Clojure because it has this. I don't know if I use it here in this new config, but basically I have it in the example. When you have here def-clj. So when you require transient def-clj, then you can use the def-clj marker, and whatever goes here is already Clojure code. So you don't have to escape it, you don't have to do anything. And then you can use, this produces the functions that can be used inside the transient. But I've been thinking about these tools a lot, and this is convenient. The transient is convenient because it has things outside of Clojure, like jack-in, because for harder projects, I use Babashka to jack in. And then, for example, it starts the atomic transactor in one thread, because Babashka is multi-threaded. So it starts the transactor in one thread, and then it jacks in, and it calls Emacs client to connect that. So these things are just starting. Let's see, I cannot choose them both. Are just starting the like BB jack in. It's just starting Babashka command. I also have another one. So if you're here, and there is another one which is I have it under here. These are Babashka tasks. I have another package for that called Babashka EL. We just basically parses your BBEDN file for all the tasks you have, and just lets you run it in the context of your project or just in general. This is also quite convenient. So I tend to automate a lot of stuff like that. And so the context transient lets you also define like a special file in your project repo where you define the transients for the project, because it's nice to have project-specific comments. But then again, when the last thing I came out on this automation path was just marking the functions in the user CLJ as interactive, which means you don't need to have any more packages. You don't need to have a special file. It's just Clojure metadata, so it's more convenient. So I think you don't need context transient anymore for context menus, because you can just do this F6 thing, and it just shows you all the functions from the user CLJ, and that's where you should keep those functions anyway, those commands that you make. So I like this approach more. I'm thinking about I'll message Borshodar about it, and if he thinks it's a good idea, I'll just try to add it to CIDER, because I think it's like a very universal thing.
Maybe I'll stop you for a moment. I know there is more from Ovi and Jeremy, and maybe we have a little time for questions. Mike, this is so inspiring and so helpful. I'll just say that Abhinav, the author of Snitch, is here with us today, and maybe Abhinav will also like to say something. So Abhinav, if you add anything to now or maybe later this talk, then it will be great to have your brief comments about this.
No, I'm quite interested in seeing how somebody else uses it. I actually had a question, is if you wanted to see something integrated with like Snitch and Portal, what would it look like? Because I don't use Portal, but then I see many people use both of them. So I was wondering if there's something I can do to make both of them work together. What would that look like?
Well, I'll think about it more, and I know you've seen my article about combining clj-reload and Snitch, which is very convenient. When I use Snitch, I use it to change the code. So I just instrument the variables right into the function, and then I start changing it and see what changes. So this is not about combining with Portal. With Portal is basically just if you have a hotkey like I do. So I have a command here which says eval and tab. You can bind it to a hotkey, you can bind it to a menu, which is also a hotkey basically. So that's all you need to work with Portal basically. Sometimes in harder cases, you would want to wrap things into like how you want to view them in Portal, etc. But I think it's completely orthogonal to what Snitch does. So Snitch is great the way it is. Just, if you have ideas about making it, like, for example, I don't know why it stopped working after I reloaded it, and I see that sometimes, but otherwise I think it's a great tool already. And thanks for that. I use it like all the time. It's one of my go-to tools, probably the go-to tool I use.
Okay.
Big things.
You should open a bug issue if you come across it, so you can try to reproduce it. So, for example, that issue with the let, I've not encountered that. So if you can find a small reproducible example, I can look at it.
Yeah, there are also things when you're using. Yeah, I know a couple of bugs that I'll file. For example, you can break Snitch with pre and post forms.
Yeah, maybe. I think there's a bug with that. Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, I know a few ways to break Snitch, so I'll file the report. I don't know why I didn't do it yet. I normally just file them.
Looking at the clock, maybe we should continue. And yeah, thank you, Abhinav, for making it today, for being with us. And I think there was a short comment by Ovi and by Jeremy, and then maybe Mike, you would like to conclude briefly. So Ovi, did you like to say
just the thing I want the most is that you should publish your Emacs config so that I could steal some stuff from there, please.
Okay, I'll work on that because it's I have a big .files repo with everything in there, and even though it's encrypted, I use Chemois, which is a nice tool for managing .files, and everything in there is encrypted. But I'm always nervous, like, okay, there are like things that you can still deduct from it. But I'll take a look and try to publish it. Sure, thanks for the question. It's nice when somebody wants to see your Emacs config,
Yeah, thank you. And Jeremy is asking in the chat, if Snitch overrides top-level defs with same name as the variables, doesn't it
of course.
restricts your using to, it restricts you to using different top-level function and variable names? Isn't it a little bit of a problem?
It might be, yeah. Of course, it's just defing things if I'm correct. So I've never actually looked at the source code of Snitch, but I'm pretty confident just defing stuff inside. So yeah, but Abhinav is better for addressing this question.
Yeah, thank you. Mike, would you like to maybe say some words to conclude your part? It was
I'm sorry about the quality of the presentations. The stuff was small and everything was jumping. I'll prepare better next time. But otherwise, thanks for listening. Yeah,
thank you so much. And you see everything about text size and all that. That's the point. We want to see workflow. So it was great to kind of look into all these things.
I have in my older config, I had like a special screencast mode, which made everything bigger and stuff like that, but it stayed in the old config. So yeah.
It will be great to have you again if you like.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for inviting me.
Tamas, would you like to have your part now?
Would I like to what?
I mean, your presentation, if you wish, we can. Yeah, thanks.
Before that, I want to add that clj-reload, Mike was talking about this Tonski's recently made library, if I'm not mistaken, right? It's not the older Stuart Sierra reloading stuff or the tool Clojure tools namespace reload, but more modern one. Okay. Yeah, I see more questions in the chat to Mike. Okay, I will switch over. Where is the screen sharing? Share. Desktop. Share, okay. Okay. I have this thing at the top. Maybe move it aside. All right, so about myself, as I mentioned, I started very early in the history of IT. My first computer was like a 1 kilobyte RAM ZX81. The reason it's important to mention is because I saw how this thing kind of evolved and how the capabilities arrived into our lives and how people started to kind of overrace them. And I used a lot of programming languages. I touched on a lot of fields for biochemical stuff to like just IT related. We were making our own PCBs, for example. That's why we had to draw on the photofilm with a very slow moving pen to make sure it got enough light to activate the photosensitive layer. So later when we put in the acid, it protected it well enough. And then these little things like the Dockart stimulator or the sperm counter, these were like very small machines with very few inputs, but it was kind of mission critical, because if it didn't give the right heartbeat to the dog, then it died. That being said, specifically Clojure, I stumbled upon Clojure because I came across Datomic and its model of how it thought about data and values and whatnot. It got me really interested. And even though I tried Clojure before and abandoned it because of its quirky names, which didn't look like any other mainstream language I did before, I gave it a second go. And since then, I'm using Clojure. From editing perspective and work perspective, I think I spent maybe inordinate amount of time thinking about these problems, and I tried all sorts of things from the very beginning. It was a constant quest to go through editors and their plugins and whatnot. So I tried the major things like Vim, bit of Emacs, and then the graphical editors, even these special ones which are built into your Clojure application and boots up together with your Clojure application. And finally, when I got to put together my first Clojure team of 5 people, we struggled a lot. We had our code in different repositories, and then for every repository we had an editor. We had a GitX window to commit into that repository, and there was just a lot of jumping around windows. And that's when I realized that IntelliJ is pretty good Git client. And then that's how I stumbled upon Cursive, and the pair of these make a lot of sense. Unfortunately, it costed us RAM upgrades into the machines because it was unusable with 8 gig RAM back then in, I don't know, when was it, 2016? Something around there. So what I experienced with Cursive, it has a lot less functionality, a lot less API surface compared to CIDER, for example. But especially for beginner Clojure users, it was very helpful to be able to navigate and get around the code even when it doesn't compile. And at the beginning, when we were not very experienced with structural editing, we missed the parentheses here and there. And it pretty often happened that we couldn't even load our namespaces. But still, we could get around a lot with intelligent navigation as opposed to just full text search, because Cursive indexes the source code. And then it indexes Java source code, the old Java libraries, and even the compiled Clojure or Java libraries, because IntelliJ comes with the class 5D compiler by default too. So again, no extra plugin setup needed, and you could navigate back and forth through the whole software stack. The fact that it limits the number of structural editing features. So it doesn't have, for example, the what is the name? Not transclusion, when you are moving a LED block in an outer scope.
Convolute?
Convolute, thank you. It doesn't support that still, but it's used relatively infrequently that we don't really miss it much. But the utilities it provides is a lot easier to learn because it's just not that many options there. Evaluation option, similar story. It has a simple model of having a REPL window. Okay, this might be too small, right? What is the global zoom in IntelliJ command control option? Yeah, all right, maybe something like this. Is it readable?
Yeah.
Yep, okay. So it has a fixed REPL window which contains all the actions, all evaluation action user does. So it has a constant transcript of both the form which you evaluated and both its return value pretty printed. And that's it. No options of not pretty printed or put it in the editor window, but in a commented form, or opening it just that one result in a separate window, which would impose extra window management overhead on the user, shifting around other windows, and so on. And this might not seem like a big issue, but when we are pair programming, even locally, not necessarily remotely, it's really important that the other person, the navigator, can keep track of what the driver who is editing the code is doing. And if the windows are jumping around, it's a lot easier to get lost in where the cursor is and what is happening. So having this more static layout, I think, is very beneficial for working together. And then let's see. So REPL window, tool window. Yeah, so it's easy to dismiss the REPL window because it's a special side window, and in IntelliJ, any kind of side window I open like this, with a Shift Escape, I can close them down and freeing up more space for editing. Yeah, I mentioned this one that you see both evaluated form and its result. So let's see how does it look like in action. So for example, I have this function here. I just load the namespace and I want to try it. And then if I say something like this, then I won't just have a false in the REPL history. I know that this is the function which was returning false. And then if I would modify the implementation and I would say something like make it return this, then here is one of the improvement we said we made. Command Control Enter would reload the current file, evaluate the last evaluated form in its original namespace. So if I would have modified a function which this function calls in another namespace, in another buffer, it would still evaluate TXR without switching the REPL namespace or anything like that. So that's it. We can see that the same form, same input now yields a different result. And then we can have an idea roughly when did this transition happen. Structural editing wise, IntelliJ comes with this concept of extend selection. Yeah, extend selection and shrink selection options. It's roughly equivalent of the expand region Emacs package, which allows the users to select with option up-down pieces of code based on semantic boundaries. And if we have a selection, we can just press left and right to dismiss the selection and jump to the beginning or the end of the selection, meaning you can use this simple 4 keys for structural navigation. So no matter where we are, we can say that, okay, I go to the beginning of this form, or here, and then that's it, like 4 keys, and you can already move around the structure pretty precisely. It also comes with built-in auto formatting, so that's another thing which, if everybody would in the project use Intellij Cursive, don't have to agree on or don't have to tune any kind of formatting tool, because the formatting rules are committed into the repository. I can also change how certain forms are resolved, both, and indented. So I could make, for example, the end indent like this. And then if you look at what has changed, then nothing has changed. That's not good. Normally, it shows this in some config file. Maybe I ignored it accidentally. So there is that. Yeah, I showed this last namespace evaluation history remembers form namespace. So there is an evaluation history with Command Option E. So let's try it. Is it actually true that it remembers? So if so I'm in this namespace, in this test namespace, and then Command Option E, pick a form. It doesn't have any namespace specification, and still it ran as expected. Yeah, so for example, if with Command Shift T, I jump over, create a test for this, and then I would simply say is equal to dctx question mark x. Yeah, I run the test with Command R, which is a custom REPL action, which says run all tests if you are if your cursor is inside the test, or sorry, what did I say? Run the selected test if you are inside the test form defined by def test, or run all tests if you are outside, unless you already run a test, because I remember in the user namespace in a var what was my last test, so I could just rerun that test. So why is this helpful? Well, I can just focus on a test. I run it once in the test namespace, and then I can come to the implementation, edit the implementation, and without jumping back to the test, I can just press Command R to see what is the effect of changing the implementation. This also makes it less necessary to use various debugging tools, because your test code already exercises your function. So if you want to see what happens when you run one of the test cases, you can just drop in some probing functions along the lines of I'm curious what this form returns. I could just do something like do to print it, right? And then I run the test with Command R, and then besides running it, we also see that it's printing some of the values. Now, this is a little bit tedious to do it like that. So we have common namespace, which we always include in most of the namespaces, which does this do to, with the extra addition of potential transforming the value you want to print. So for example, if you are looking at the map, maybe you just want to see the map keys, because the map printed completely would look too big otherwise. Or some of the parts are not printable because there is no printer defined for it. Having this question mark utility, what we can do is write the code usually in this threaded form, because then we can just throw a question mark in, single keystroke, run the test, and it doesn't work. What happened? It looks like some recursion happened. What am I doing? Question mark xnil, yeah, like this. So again, I fixed the probing function, and without moving away, I could just rerun the test, which rerun this modified form, and then I see what is the data at that point in time. And all I needed is like a close to trivial function. I'm using Puget color pretty printer to have like more readable results, but that's like a minor enhancement. In our real project, we actually also show the stack trace where the printing has happened. So you could jump from the printed location with cursive built-in stack trace line recognizer back to the source code. What else? Yeah, I already mentioned that
Can
one.
you show on the structural extent, show the selection of the keys and values in a map? This is really cool.
Yeah. So, for example, here we have, no, this is a bad example. Where can I find a bigger? Yeah, that's a good example here. So if I select map value with option up and press option up again, then it selects its key first instead of selecting all of the key values pairs, which is happening on the third key press. This is something I miss a lot from Emacs Clojure mode. And what's more, Cursive understands the key value pair, because when you say move it up and down, then it doesn't move it line by line. It moves the whole key value pair, even if it's a multi-line thing. I don't know if it's understandable based on this example. And this is very useful on bigger forms. Similarly, if we are in a let form, it recognizes the binding name and the binding value, and then with like, what is it, Command Shift up and down, I can rearrange the let forms. Okay, let's see quickly. What else? Cons, well, the static analysis is also a con because it needs more memory. Similarly, when you are using LSP, which practically does the same logic as Cursive, spawns a separate process which needs a lot more memory too. So it has a similar text. It's more time to open a project because it does an indexing for the sake of static analysis at the beginning. And we have to kind of hint it what various macros mean. So the navigation works because it has to understand if a macro defines certain bindings, then those bindings has to be recognized as the definition of the binding and go back and forth. Some cat is mewing here. What's going on? No. It had issues with handling big output. So if you accidentally print tons of data, then it was a bit hard to stop it or navigate back and forth, had to limit the syntax highlight scope. This is not so much of a problem in the last year because Colin Fleming re-implemented the REPL window with more modern JetBrains platform facilities.
Yeah. Tamas,
Yeah.
This is wonderful, so helpful. I think it would be good to converge in a few minutes, so there will be some time for a few questions before we move to the next part. So no rush, just wanted to kind of remind you of the time. Thanks.
Do we have questions?
Not yet, but there might be
Okay.
later. So it would be good to kind of converge in a few minutes.
Okay.
Thanks.
Well, pretty much last section left. So the limited editing capabilities feel like a constraint or a con, but in my experience, it didn't feel constraining for the first 6 or 8 years of me using Clojure on a bunch of different projects. And it was more of a pro because it was a lot easier to teach than any other tooling. Extensibility, I already showed that it has this REPL command concept, which is not freeform programming, but allows a lot of common options and structures your extensions to be before execution, and after execution sections. So it actually aids you to construct extensions this way. And then let's see, cursive versus Emacs. Well, I guess I don't have a lot of time for that, and I was demoing this section, so let me think quickly if I missed anything. Navigate by namespace, not files. You do Command Shift, Control Shift O, and then you can just type the namespace name. It still shows the file name, the last part of the file name, but you don't have to think of the file structure. So if you have multiple source roots, for example, it's shown, then the test one is highlighted in green. So you know that it's coming from a different source root. And if you really want to know where the file is, you can do a command up to get this floating file system navigator thing, which allows you to go somewhere else in your directory structure without taking up space with this tree style thing, which is command 1 to turn on and off. Recent files, yeah, I didn't show that, but in Intellij, when you have a list of things, usually you don't have to press anything else. You can just start typing, and it narrows the list or highlights the typed substring. And in this specific view, this command D shows your files, or if you press it again, only the edited ones. But it also has a left side list, which you can just navigate with arrows, which shows all the available side windows. For example, the dependency window where you can specify which aliases from the Clojure deps file should be indexed. So it pulls in the development libraries also for code navigation. And yeah, same thing. If you look at here, for example, I type readme or RE, then I can, with up and down, only move through those files. And similarly, when I look at the Git interface, I can just jump to a branch like that, and so on. Important to know Control V to get access to a menu of all the version control actions, similar to Magit transient, for example. And then, yeah, refactoring, maybe I show refactoring, and that's the last of it. So it doesn't do namespace rename to move it around the directory hierarchy. You can only rename the last piece of the namespace. But for example, you can do Control T, introduce variable. You select that which form do you want to extract, and it automatically recognizes there are multiple of those. So I can extract all 3, and then it asks what the context should be. And then that's it. This is something which we use pretty often. And then, as I described in my notes, you can go from here and say that actually I want to create a function which does this, and then I can extract it out, put it here, and then these ones should be function calls, something like that. Okay, too many arguments. Oh, defn command R, and then yeah, tests run again without failures. I think that's the meat of it, and I would open it up to questions.
Yeah, Tamas, that was amazing, and so many things I think many of us didn't know about Cursive. And we have time for one question, and then we can continue in the chat or after all presentations. So any question to Tamas? Yeah, then maybe I wish to ask you, because you have this perspective, having used so many environments, what do you miss most from previous programming environments like QBasic or others you've been using, Turbo Pascal and so on?
Well, since I practically grew up on Forth, I think I experienced an interactive programming environment super early. What you have to know about Forth is in maybe 4 or 16 kilobyte, you can have a system which contains a line editor, a compiler, and an interpreter. And it can operate through a serial line. And that's it. That's all you need. Because the interpreter is typically 5-6 assembly instructions, because it's just jumping through addresses in memory. The compiler is maybe a page of code, and the end result is a language where you have hyper minimal syntax. You practically have words, which are characters without a space, and then spaces, and then other words. That's the whole syntax, and this was enough for us to do tons of embedded code, and the main use case for Forth was to control what is it, the big dishes, radio telescopes, to tell them to turn left, right, follow a star, and things like that. And it also showed how you can build really DSLs, because you just define new words and you can immediately use those words. And you didn't have to bother necessarily with parameter list and whatnot, because the description of parameters were just comments in the definition, because every function, which is a Forth word, received the complete state of a stack as its input. So I kind of a bit baffled that this kind of flexibility and hyper low resource requirements is not really achievable today. Like, we have a lot of the interactivity with Clojure, but the gigabytes of runtime behind it is, I think it's excessive. So I'm very curious to see what comes of the C++ implementation. I forgot the name of it now. And Babushka doesn't count, like hundreds of megabytes of executable is just ridiculous. Similar thing, Rebel. 1 megabyte executable, cross-platform, GUI system, editor, immediate interactive things, 50 data types.
It will be
So-
great to come back to this topic. As you know, whenever you wish to talk about it again, it would be wonderful. And Tamas, any brief concluding words?
Well, I would like people to not do two things. Don't jump to end of forms and use Control-C, Control-E, Control-X, Control-E to evaluate, and then navigate back where they were, because it's just painful to see. And similarly, when you are in a terminal, which, by the way, I also don't use external terminal, although I have Ghosty, because with Command 2, I can just pull up and down one. You can do Control-L to clear the screen, or Command-K to clear the scrollback buffer too, as opposed to typing clear. and polluting the REPL history. I think that's just silly. And also this full screen zoom. I don't know why people are not doing it. IntelliJ supports it. Emacs supports it for a couple of versions now. And all the time I just see the text zoomed in window by window, not even on all window. And then all the menu stuff, which is also very interesting, stays like end size.
Yeah.
So it's just a recommendation for future presenters. And please spread these ideas because we will have better educational content there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Tamas. And we can continue on the chat. And now we will have John's presentation. Neovim.
Okay. I just wrestle with Zoom positioning and meeting controls. There we go. Should be mostly out of the way. Cool. Yeah, there we go. Alrighty. Can you see my screen, everybody?
Yes.
Yes.
Lovely. So I'm not going to do an introduction. If you want to know anything about me or what I do, then just go to Practicalli, practical.li. There's a website there with lots of information about me, about what I do, and most importantly, like books. So I've got a book like General Engineering, one on Clojure, Clojure Web Services, and one for Spacemacs and Neovim. So I used to use Spacemacs a lot for the most of my Clojure years. The last couple of years I've been using Neovim. So I do have a Practicalli Neovim book that goes over a lot of things and covers my workflow in more detail than I'm going to have a chance to do here. So basically what I'm going to try and do is like a whistle tour through my Clojure workflow, general workflow, and showing you like some aspects of Neovim and Conjure, which is the Neovim equivalent to CIDER. So, and a lot of the ideas and even some of the libraries are being used from CIDER as well. So it's a very similar kind of experience there as well. And generally my Practicalli Spacemacs experience is kind of like I've transported that over to Neovim. Yeah, pretty smoothly. And some things work a little bit better. Some things work not quite so nicely, but I think it's very comparable to the experience I used to use with Emacs. So yeah, so basically I take a REPL driven development. So I'll start a REPL, I'll connect to that to my editor, and also use Portal as well to like understand what my system is doing and have a complete kind of history of the REPL state, the REPL session that I've had as well, which is really nice. And so yeah, so the Portal like takes over from what I would probably use CIDER Inspector for initially, but then you can do a lot more with Portal as well. So let's actually do some demoing in full screen. So Neovim is a terminal-based editor. So you will need a terminal. There's also something called Neovide, so you can actually use an IDE on top of that. And you can also incorporate Neovim inside Visual Studio Code and other editors as well. So if you just start NVim itself, it's a very powerful but not very appealing kind of looking environment to work in. It's not an IDE, it's an editor, but there's a lot of useful, powerful things you can do with text when you start. And you can check the health things, and you can see it'll kind of tell you how if you've got NVim set up nicely and if there's any issues there as well. And it also shows here I've got some tree sitter parsers, and tree sitter was one of the reasons why I wanted to use Neovim, because tree sitter provides a very nice environment for languages, to understand languages. So it's a parser generator, an incremental parsing library as well. And so it basically very efficiently understands the text you've got in your editor. And it allows not just syntax highlighting, but allows other plugins to be able to tap into understanding this concrete syntax tree of the language, whatever language it is. And so, like in the same way that CLJ Condo does static analysis to Clojure, this is doing it for every language, including Clojure. And the upshot is it just makes it really fast for syntax highlighting and all sorts of other plugins to do really cool stuff. And so you can take like a very minimal kind of like syntax highlight code, and you can add a lot more detail to that as well. And other plugins can tap into that as well without having to do all the work, do all the parsing work themselves. And so Envim by itself is not. You could kind of create. It's a hyper extensible. They call it like a hyper extensible Vim-based text editor. So you can do an awful lot of configuration to that. But that can take time, just like crafting your own Emacs configuration can take days, months, a lifetime, usually. So you can also use community-based distributions of configurations. So I use something called Astro Envim, which provides a lot of features out of the box. But the really nice thing is all these features are basically plugins. Just like you have packages with Emacs, you've got plugins with Neovim, and you can disable the plugins if you don't want them. So you can have you can have an out-of-box experience, but you can still go in and like not load in the features that you actually want. And it actually uses a package manager called Lazy, which will lazy load these plugins, and so it only loads what you actually need to use. So it's a very low resource intensive environment to use. So I also use it on my mobile phones as well. So I've actually been running Neovim and Astro Envim on my smartphone and my tablet as well. So if I'm traveling around, take a little keyboard with me. And it's a really neat kind of way to, if you're stuck in an airport for an extra couple of hours, it's a nice way to do a bit of coding. Right. So rather than having the less than exciting Neovim default, I set up a shell command called Astro. So it's just a shell alias that will load in a particular configuration. So with Neovim, you can actually do a, let's see, config. You can set the shell aliases, and so I have basically used this envim app name, which is an environment variable you can set. So you can set that to a directory that's relative to the config directory, and it will load in a particular configuration from that particular directory and then run envim itself. So if I just create a Clojure project, let's create that. Yeah. So I'm just using an alias from my Practicalli Clojure CLI config to create a new project using deps new. So I've got a new project, which is just there. So it's kind of standard web application for Clojure, which creates like a simple API with Reedit and Swagger. And so now I can use Astro to load in some of the files there. So this is just a markdown file, which is showing with a bit of ASCII art in there as well. And I can have a navigation of the file system, which is relevant to where I opened the file. And so you can browse through there, you can browse through directories, and so on. And I've got some dev environments, which these are kind of part of my Clojure workflow, which I'll go through in a minute. And I can also find files quickly if I want to do, let's see, I want to do the user, custom user configuration I've got there. I can load that up. So there's a tool called Telescope, which you can find things really quickly. So I can find files, I can find words in things, all the usual kind of things you would expect from an IDE. There's also the Neovim and Vim kind of specific stuff, so I can find marks, positions in the file that I set up. So I can do a, what's it, mark H. Boop. And boop. Let's do a mark D. I can jump around very easily using these. So I've got a little help system here, which runs whenever I run the REPL and tells me what I've got set up in via the custom user namespace. So you can kind of navigate very easily using Neovim. There's also, when you get into the actual code, oops, let's search for service. Boom. Here we go. You can also navigate to other namespaces using LSP. So there's LSP integrated into this configuration I've got. So Neovim has an LSP client, and so you can connect that to any server. So I'm using Clojure LSP server underneath, and I can connect to. Did I do that right? Oh no, I didn't do that right. Oops, there we go. Space. So if I do space L, I can then go and let's get a symbol outline if I wanted to. So I can look at all the symbols that are in this particular namespace. There's not many in this. This is like a very simple intro namespace. Boop. There we go. And I can also use the G D to go and show the definition of the current symbol. So I can jump around different namespaces, even in namespaces that are in zip files and sort of libraries. So any kind of jar is a zip file, and I can kind of navigate through that and look at the code, just like you can do with any other IDE. I used to do this with Spacemacs as well. Let's close that. So it's got all the kind of features you would expect. So there's a lot of code action. Oops. So you do code actions, formatting buffers, although it'll format it automatically as well. You can search for workspace symbols, get signature help on things as well. And it's also showing me LSP warnings as well. So if I do space L D, it's showing me the diagnostic issues that it's coming up with. So here it's saying that this particular namespace is actually required, but it's not actually used in this namespace. So that might be something I want to refactor. And it's also got refactoring tools in as well. You can rename names. You can rename the current symbol. Let's go to this one. So rename main to something else if I wanted to, and that would update all the references again because it's using Clojure LSP underneath. So everything throughout the project that's referencing main would get updated with a new name. So that's quite nice. And what else was I going to show? I forgot. Yeah, I think that's it for kind of the basics of there. So let's actually start going into the Clojure workflow. So at the moment, I don't actually have a REPL started. My preference is to start a REPL from the command line, especially with a web application, because I might want to start and stop things and restart the service as well. So I'm going to make a REPL. So I've got a make file in here that has all these tasks that help me kind of have a very simple command line to that as well, but it does show you what command I'm actually running. So I'm running Clojure, and I'm using my REPL reloaded thing, which again is from the Clojure CLI config project I've got, which has a whole a bunch of community aliases for doing things. This one will load in my custom user config. It will start Portal, as you see here. We've got Portal window now. It prints out the help menu, so I can remember how to actually use all the things I've defined in my user namespace. I'm just going to move that to a different screen for a second. Boom. Oops. Yeah, so you can see the I've got mulog as well, which is publishing my events. So like if I want to log anything, I can use mulog to do that. The mulog events, so all the logs will actually go to are all tapped into Portal as well. And so I've kind of started Portal, and I've also connected it to the nREPL session, so it's actually listening to all the events as well. So you can see in the when Portal started, it's not starting blank, it's starting with this log message that I've included, which has come from the Gameboard router and router app, and is just kind of it's just a simple message to show the config is there. I'm using Donut as like a simple way to kind of manage the configuration, so I can start, stop things, and I can define components within the web app that are related to each other. But I'll come to that in a second. Yeah, so now I've got a REPL started, and we are running an nREPL server on the port there as well. So I can connect my editor to that. Oops, wrong one. So if I go into, let's go into the user environment. So if I open a new file, it should actually just connect to that. But I can also evaluate the namespace there. So I'm going to comma, and I've got a Clojure specific menu here for running things, just like you would have in Spacemacs or in Emacs. You have Clojure mode. So for the Clojure file type, I have this menu that loads up, and I've got evaluation in here. So I can go and evaluate. I can evaluate the buffer, the file. If I haven't saved the buffer, I can evaluate the file, and they'll be slightly different. I can evaluate the current form, or I can evaluate the root. So I want to do the top level, the root form. So I can just evaluate that. It gives me a brief flash to show me what has been evaluated. And normally I'll have a REPL buffer open, but in a different tab. So you can see up there at the top, we've got 3 tabs open already in Neovim, and we're going to create a new tab page so we can have like a separate REPL there. So if I do want to go and look at it, it's very easy, but I don't need to have it there all the time. So let's go into the log, and then create a new tab page. And so it's we can see that it's connected to the nREPL session, which is nice. Just picks up that from the nREPL port. And we've got an nREPL session here. What I didn't realize is actually you can actually do code in the log buffer as well. Oh, I've forgotten how to do that now. There we go. Oops, what did I do? Oh, there you go. And so, yeah, so you can evaluate stuff in there. I don't really use this myself very much, but sometimes it's kind of handy. But this will also have a history of my REPL session. And I can use GT to switch back to the 2 pages. So we've got 1 and 2 up here, which is the different pages, the tab pages I've got here. So I can quickly switch between all the code tabs I've got open and the REPL window if I want to do something, if I want to look at something else, and I don't want to jump to Portal to do that. I can kind of have a look. I'm going to quit that. What are we going to do? Let's see if this actually does anything. So I've got my REPL prompt here, and let's start the application. And so I'm using Donut here. I've also got a version of service which doesn't use any component library. It just uses an atom to save the reference to the web server. So we can kind of reload new Clojure into that very easily. And hopefully that's started. So it's showing me that I've got some, I've got a Gameboard service running on port 8080. So if we go to my browser here, get rid of that. So we can go there and, yep, we've got a running application. And if we go to Portal now, you can see it's actually been pushing some information to Portal already. Let's see if I can make that a little bit bigger. Boom, boom. There we go. And so when I was starting things up, it's kind of started when I evaluated the user namespace. It showed me what code I've actually evaluated. I did that evaluation in the REPL buffer, and it showed me that as well. It showed me the code and the results and how long it took as well, which is quite neat. And then, yeah, so this is running some functions. So if you look at the namespace, so this is running the game board service itself. So when I've done start, it's kind of started some services up, and it's loaded. When I've gone to the page, it's shown that it's used the get request to get swagger.json, which is the default kind of entry point into the application. It just loads up the swagger.json and builds that that nice kind of user interface where I can interact with the API straight away. Whoops. Yeah, so you can kind of have a look at some of the information, like with the first presenter showed. You can kind of get details of the request. I'm using a piece of middleware to kind of get this as well, so I could surface more information if I wanted to. But I'm also pulling out some log information as well from mulog, so it's capturing traces, and it's also using this flake to kind of so I can get a really accurate kind of picture of how long something's taken to flow through the system as well. So if I have to jump through a whole bunch of middleware, it's kind of showing me I can use this flake to trace that through there as well. So it's quite a nice way to see how well your API is performing and if there's any issues there.
Can you show if you put the flake value at the top, the type here to begin filtering, would it filter to the mulog events only? I mean the flake value, like 50 WE.
Oh, okay. Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Possibly. I have not tried this before, but it's always interesting to try new things. Let's have a look. I mean, it's highlighting it, but it's not filtering out anything else.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot more things I'd like to do with Portal. I haven't really got around to doing that yet, but yeah, it's the filter I haven't really experimented with, but that would be something I'll look at next, I think. Yeah, cool. Okay. Yeah, and if I do some more requests, so the nice thing about the Swagger APIs, you can try it out. You can execute it. You can also set it up so it'll use a token as well. So if you want, if you have your API secured, you can also add your own token, and it will use that token to be able to talk to the API and let you in. And so here it's showing me, it's showing me that I've executed it. I've got a 200 reply, and this is the response I've got from that. A little simple JSON response from status. And what I like about it is also it gives you the curl. So if you need to do it on the command line, you can kind of do. You've already got the curl command to do that as well. Just for the sake of completeness, I can also do the same thing with all the other ones as well. Oop. You can also get it to like return Eden as well, which is quite cool. And yeah, so this is returning a JSON data structure with all the game information that the API makes up at the moment because it's only a demo. But if I go back to Portal, you can see that each of those requests again are showed up there, so I can kind of go in and introspect them as well and find out more information about them, especially if something goes wrong. Alrighty, so let's see. What else do we want to cover? Yeah, so how does this all work? How do I get these things? Oh, I can do a restart. If I change the code, I can do a restart, and it will reload it. If I've changed any configuration, if I've changed like components of the system, it's going to reload those as well. I forgot it's been a while since I've done that. Oh, is it status? Oh, system, isn't it? There we go. I can also get like a full print out of the data structure that represents my application, my web application system. So all the different components. It's got mulog, it's got the functions that we're calling for the handler, and other things else. So it's very easy to kind of have a look at that in detail. If there's some piece of information that's not there, then or missing or different, then I can kind of go and inspect that as well.
You don't use pretty printing in this context?
I should really do that. I should do that really. Yeah, I think that would be a really nice thing to tweak on there. But yeah, I can always copy. Yeah, there's it should. There's no reason why I shouldn't have done that. I can set up. I think I've got mulog set up, so I do use pretty printing. But let's have a look.
Because it's semi-pretty because it's colored, but
Yeah,
not indented.
Yeah, it's colored because of I'm using this REPL prompt is using Rebel readline, and so it does add some extra features in here, so I can get completion in the REPL terminal UI. So if I want to do I want to do log events. Let's do a message. I can't type today. There we go. Let's close it up. Yeah. And then that appears in Portal as well. Oop. It should do. Oops. Yeah. What else was I going to do? Okay. Let's go back to here. So this is all set up. So the Neovim stuff uses pretty much what I kind of created for SpaceMax originally. So this is this custom user namespace. So Clojure, when you start Clojure REPL, it'll default into the user namespace. And if you define your own user.clj file, it will load that in as well by default. So my alias that I use to start the Clojure REPL includes the dev directory. So all of these files are loaded. And I have a user file. I've got one for the system REPL. So this basically defines the start and stop and restart things here. So the restart here is just using Clojure namespace, but I could use CLJ. Is it CLJ refresh, the new one? So I could use that as instead if I wanted to. I haven't really needed to use CLJ refresh yet, but it does have a lot of extra features that'd be quite interesting to have a look at. And then there's Portal. So these are just basically starting an instance of Portal, and then so we check to see whether there's a Portal session running already, and if not, then we'll open it and I can define the theme. Here I'm just using the nice kind of Groovebox dark theme, and then I'm connecting that. I'm setting Portal as a tap source for the Clojure REPL. And so if I do tap anywhere, then it will send that to Portal already. When I start this, so I'm using I'm using my Clojure CLI config, which is on the GitHub website. And if I do and search for what do you want? Reloaded. There we go. So this is the alias I'm using to start my REPL. There's a whole bunch of other ones as well. There's simpler ones that don't load in as much. So I'm loading in the test and dev directories, and I'm including tools, Clojure tools namespace, but I could use clj-reload there as well, and logging. So I'm including Bruno's really nice mulog log framework, and Clojure, starting Clojure as well, so I can run Clojure tests and test checks, so I can do generative testing, criterion, so I can do some benchmarking if I wanted to as well. So this is quite a very loaded REPL session. I do have a simple kind of REPL Rebel one, which just runs the Rebel readline thing as well. So this is dev reloaded. So this is one I can use if I'm jacking in. And if I go and find the other one, this is a REPL reloaded one. This is the actual one I'm calling from the command line. And so I do have some extra bits in here. So I throw in that I'm running Rebel in there as well. So I'll start Rebel up. But to get the portal working, I use this portal wrap portal middleware. So as well as injecting nREPL into there to do all the CIDER stuff, because Conjure does support like CIDER nREPL, uses CIDER nREPL to do all the really fun stuff that Emacs does. You can also add here, I'm doing the portal nREPL as well, so it's listening to all the evaluation events in over nREPL. So anything I do over nREPL will end up in portal. I mean, that does mean that you do get everything in here, but you can, if you got too much in here, you can just go and clear or do command Control L to clear everything up. Boop. Yeah. And start again. So it's quite easy. And so I don't really need to tap anything directly. So I haven't really set up any particular kind of key bindings for this, for tapping. But yeah, if I wanted to, I could do something like that, or just do the tap command directly. What else we got here? Oh, and mulog events. So I created a tap publisher. So you can have lots of different publishers for mulog. So it published to Amazon and all sorts of different log aggregators. But you can also have, this is just a simple one to tap. Basically just taps the item to whatever's the tap source, which is already set up as portal. And so for every log event that I generate, it just gets tapped into portal as well. So that gives me a very complete history in my portal view. Something else I was going to do here. Anything else? Any questions so far? One of the things I do is I make sure I kind of exclude some directories or just include specific directories. So when I'm doing a refresh, when using Clojure namespace refresh, then I only include the source and resources. So I don't include the dev thing. So it doesn't try and reload all my kind of dev tools, which are kind of sometimes if I didn't do this, then sometimes it would try and load portal twice, which I didn't really want to do. And then I've got I'm using Clojure CLI, so I've got the adlibs version. I've got version 12, I think. I think this is using version 12. Yeah, so we're using Clojure 12. So we can use, oops. I'm gonna do that. So we can use the adlibs thing instead here, so I can comment those out. And I can use adlibs library as well. So I could basically add in a new name, add in a new library, hot load that into the running REPL. I wouldn't need to restart the REPL if I was using a new library. So if I wanted to start using Selma for templating, I could just look up the library name and then just add that and do adlib, and it will include that library name there as well. I'm going to comment those out again.
Why is it commented when it's in a comment form?
That's a good question. I think it's yep, that's a good question. I think it might be just because because I'm getting LSP warnings.
I see.
That's probably why I did it. Yeah, it's unresolved symbol. Yeah.
Got it.
I also want to ask something. You had a comment there about LSP giving you like depth snippets to add dependency forms. Is that just, is it giving you completions for things on Clojures? Did LSP Clojure go that far, or is it just the function name to load the library in?
Yeah, there is a completion system. It's very similar to kind of the Emacs one as well. I do have snippets, so if I do a defen, I've got like snippets I can include there as well. So some of these, there's some snippets built into Clojure LSP. I've also defined some of my own snippets as well. And so yeah, I can do insert a defen with docstring, and yeah, it will tab through. Oops, I didn't want to do it. And I can go in, yeah, right, a good.
Yeah, so, sorry, I
So-
was more referring to, say you want to add a new dependency to a live REPL. Would LSP give you suggestions? For example, as you said, Selmer, right? If you have like SEL, would it give you like suggestions for Selmer and things on Clojures? That was what I was curious about.
That would be really nice.
I think cursive supports that when you type stuff in the debugging.
Yeah.
But I don't think LSP has that.
No,
Although
I don't.
very
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah, I think that would be quite challenging because there's a lot of things to kind of match, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, because it's LSP is based on Clojure, based on CLJ Conjure, which is analyzing a project. Yeah, not necessarily analyzing the whole of the Clojure world. So you think you would need something else. But there is Clojure. Why there's a or something like that. Which will do. Let's see. So it's probably not quite the right command because I haven't used that. Oh, it actually was. That was quite good. There we go. Oh no, it's missing. Oh, do I need to do? I'm just making stuff up here. It's something like this. So, and I think that's it's. I think I've got a. I think I've got a. I do have a. Yeah. Oh yeah, the find depth thing here is that's an old one. Oh, it's search libraries. There we go. So I do have a thing that does that. Is that going to work? It might do. There's also an outdated one as well. Okay. Search libraries. Let's try that. No. It's the boom, boom, there we go. So that's just oh, that's mine. Oh, that's using find libraries. That's not. There's a built-in one that actually does that for you. I can't remember what that is now. But I'll see if I can find that at the end. But that'd be a useful thing. But yeah, you can look up libraries using Clojure CLI, and
It's fine. We don't have to
Yeah.
spend time now. I was just curious about LSP because I saw that comment and it looked cool.
Yeah. Yeah, something like that works. It's yeah, might take a few seconds. See if that actually comes up with anything. Anyway, yeah. So adlibs, you can hot load things, and you can either you can look things up in Clojures, or you can kind of use a CLI to do that, or just ask a friend. Okay, anything else? What else would I want to do? So we've covered evaluating a little bit. Yeah, so there's all the kind of usual evaluation stuff you would do. Let's go to
John, maybe I'll stop you for a moment. It is very generous of you and everybody to actually stay longer beyond the official time. And if you can, that is lovely. Maybe at some point it would be good to stop the recording just because it is so nice to have some unrecorded conversation. So I'm not suggesting we stop now, but maybe at some point you would like to say, yeah, let us stop the recorded part and keep going as much as you and everybody can and wish. Keep going.
Yeah, let's do 5 minutes, like 3 to 5 minutes more. Just want to show a few extra things, and then we'll wrap up. Then we'll wrap up the recording.
Whatever you like. Thanks.
Yeah. So it's all the evaluation stuff there. So comma E, so I can evaluate the buffer. One of the nice things I like to do is evaluate to comments, and so I can evaluate the route to a comment, and so that shows a nice comment afterwards in there as well. So that's quite a nice way if I'm just hacking around. I don't have to jump to the REPL to kind of do things. I can just do things in my source code editor. I usually do those inside a comment form, and you can see that's not in there. So I could slurp those into it using structured editing. But I also have Parinfer, which I've been using, which basically can be set to par edit mode, but I've got here just set to alignment mode. So if I do a space, oh, it's moved the closing bracket already for me. So it's just by aligning stuff, it will basically make sure that things are in the right place. And if I move things out, so I've now basically barfed out the 1, 2, 3 vector in there. And if I want to put it back in, I can put it back in as part of the comment, which doesn't make sense. And then I can put it back in under map. And so so Parinfer works slightly differently to paredit. So you're moving the text around, and it's making sure that the actual structure of your code is not being broken. And it kind of works very nicely with all the Emacs, all the NVim, like the Vim style editing. So if I do delete the line, then it's kind of getting rid of the code, but it's also moving the closing bracket back up to the right place as well. And if I delete this as well, so it hasn't broken my code, but it's got rid of the line I wanted to as well. And it's really nice. The one thing that I did find tricky at first was just like, oh, I kind of want to move this closing bracket down myself, but I can't. But if I actually type in a new function, it's moved that there already. And so it's kind of taking, if you just focus on actually just writing the code you want to write, then Parinfer makes sure it's all in the right place. I do also have a Parinfer plugin as well, but I can't remember what all the key bindings are. So I shall have to write a menu for that, then I might learn them. But you can slurp and barf there as well if you wanted to. There's a couple of different plugins you can use paredit as well, which is quite nice.
Are you using Parinfer yourself, or you were just
yeah,
saying...
I mainly use Parinfer. I found out that when I started moving towards like Vim style editing, a lot of the structural editing I used to do and navigation stuff, I just used to use. I used to use like smart parens in Emacs, but then I just started using like the Vim to move around. So if I want to move around, the different structure, I could do. I can use a % sign to move around between different parts of the code, and so it's quite easy to kind of move around like the structure of that very easily just with the same key. I don't have to learn as many extra keys there. It's just part of what Neovim and Vim style editing provides, and so it's quite easy for me to kind of just focus on writing the code rather than like moving the structure around. I mean, you can still kind of do stuff. If I wanted to move things around, I could also like do a visual select around using the % key. So I'm just selecting that particular structure, and I can move it around. I could replace it with.
So how you move the key value pair in this case, for example, with Vim?
Yeah, so I could so that's the kind of same as like doing a raise, using. So you're basically replacing start with the function as well. So you can. It's very easy to kind of once you get into Vim editing, which does take a while. I appreciate, but it's very powerful. And it replaced most of the structural editing stuff that I wanted to do. I used to do with Emacs. Anything else for any tests?
And this is the smart mode of paredit where you don't have to switch between indent and whatever modes.
So yeah, so power edit is just like it will only be driven by
Sorry,
commands. Yeah,
Parinfer.
but Parinfer is the what it's called the indent mode. So you're basically just indenting to align to basically do stuff. So if you want to, yeah, if you move the indentation, then it moves the.
No, I mean it had two modes in the past, in the initial versions, version 1 and 2. And you had
Well,
to
it's got like three modes. So you can do insert, so like the indent, you can do Parinfer, and there's another kind of like hybrid one that it'll do. So it's a mixture of both. But yeah, I just use the insert one. So it's the alignment one. So if you align your code correctly, then it gives you the right kind of brackets. And I do a lot.
So if you put some place between the mu log line, would it move the whole structure?
Yeah. So if I kind of move that,
Space.
then it's moving. Yeah, it's moving the. It's kind of moving the kind of like the.
But you are just pressing space in this case, or some?
Yeah, it's just space.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just moving text. Yeah. I've really messed this up now. So there we go. Cool. I also run tests. You can run tests in here as well. So I like using Clojure. So it will kind of run. I can either run it in here, and I think it shows it in the. Does it show? Yeah. So it'll show it in the log here. So it showed the results there. I usually kind of run Clojure on the command line. So I can do. I've got a make watch. Oh, test watch. There we go. And this will just basically run Clojure. So basically, just this test run alias runs Clojure test runner, and it ensures like the test environment's loaded as well. And I've got watch equals true, so it'll basically, if I do any changes to here, so I've got a piece of code here that's got that's failing, a test that's failing. If I go in and make this test work, if I go and change the code, then as soon as I save it, it will then update that. It'll rerun the test, and it will tell me if it's passing or not as well. So it's quite nice to have that running in the background, especially when you're writing a lot of new tests, and so make sure you're not breaking anything as you go along. And yeah.
So this is a separate process, though, right?
Yeah, and I could do that actually in here. I could do a floating window, so a terminal float, and run. I could just run the make test in here, and it would run that as well. So if I just wanted to have a quick see what was going on, and by default, my tests these tests will fail fast, so it'll only run the first test. Oh, I don't have the. Oh, that's the wrong. Sorry, that's the wrong Neovim. Yeah, so I could run. Oops. Oh, what am I doing? Oh, yes, space. Yeah. So it'll fail fast. So it'll only run the first. So if as soon as it comes to a failing test, it'll stop. So it doesn't run the whole test suite. So it's quite quick and simple. But if I wanted to run the whole test suite, then yeah, I can do that in a separate thing here, and I could also get it to run all of the I get to run everything, so it will it'll watch the file system for changes and then just run every single test, even if they fail. So that's quite nice.
But you cannot navigate back from the failure, right? Because you are just on terminal.
Yeah. So it does give me it does give me the namespace. So I mean, it's not too difficult to kind of get there, and it gives me the line number as well. But yes, I can't click on that and go back to that as well. I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't think you can kind of do that in there, but I haven't really found the need to do that very much. So there we go. I think I've covered everything. Oh yeah, there's just one quick thing. So if I wanted to commit on this stuff, then there's lazy gits, which is part of this. If you are using lazy git on the command line, it's quite nice. But I like using space git. Yes, there we go. So this is NeoGit, which is very much like Magit, and so you've got the Magit status equivalent buffer here as well, and it's opened it up in a separate tab page as well. So just like I open this up in full screen in Magit, and I can go in and add things, stage individual lines, all the things you can basically do with Magit. You can do here, stage all these, or stage everything, and commit. And you've got commit, you've got all the mens and stuff like that you would have in normal kind of like Magit style. And you've got command line there as well, blah, blah, blah. And I've also got this set up to use, ooh, there we go. Commit. Did I not commit that? There we go. So I've also got Git signatures on here as well, which this is a Git configuration I have. So all my commits are signed using an SSH key. And I think that's it. So just to wrap up, everything I want to do with Neovim with Clojure is in the Practicalli Neovim. There as well. There's an install guide to kind of get going, some recommendations on terminals, how to set up Clojure using Neovim, and there's my Practicalli AstroVim config, which basically gives you, it's based on the AstroVim template, which is quite a simple way. So if you want to build your own, you can use that, or you can just be nice and lazy and start off with the Practicalli Astro thing, and it's all there out the box for you. It's very easy to override things as well. There's an override guide. If you don't like some of the things I've got, you can kind of go in and override things, and I've showed you all the things I've changed from the Astro and Vim setup as well. So it's quite easy to follow, hack around, and do whatever you want with that. I think that's it for the recording.
Incredible. Thank you so much. Any brief question to John before we stop the recording?
I have a question. So you had an Emacs config before too, but it sounds like you transitioned to this Neovim setup, and you prefer this Neovim setup over the Emacs one, right?
I do. I still use Emacs. There was like a transition phase where I was trying to get Neovim set up the way I wanted to do, and basically the way I used SpaceMax. So there's not really much difference in how I used. There's a slight bit of difference. I used a lot more of the Vim style editing, as I used to use evil mode in Emacs, and I found that just using that so much quicker and so much easier to kind of remember all the key bindings, and that when I could do the same thing in Neovim, then it made it simpler. And I think one of the things back in when Emacs 29 first came out, there was a bit of sluggishness in the response to editing, which I couldn't quite get. I think it was I was using the native compilation, which kind of improved some things, but also the general some of the other things made it worse. But yeah, without using that, without using native compilation, I think it was still okay. But I just wanted to use part of the reason I wanted to use Neovim was like the tree sitter, because it really does. I mean, Emacs is pretty fast, but it does an awful lot of extra things that I didn't really need to do, which I've kind of disabled, like reading, because it reads every line twice. I used to find some of the logging stuff a little bit slow sometimes, like reading long, if you've got big kind of log lines. Neovim just seemed to be a bit faster with doing that as well. It's got a faster start time, like we're talking milliseconds rather than like seconds, a couple of seconds for Emacs. But I mean, that wasn't really a big motivation for me. But I just wanted a slightly simpler experience than I was getting with Emacs. There's quite a lot of a crossover between CIDER and Clojure LSP, where as Conjure came later, then there's a lot less kind of crossover. So it hasn't implemented any features really that were already provided by Clojure LSP. So there's no kind of you don't have to kind of craft your configuration to make sure that you don't get any conflict. I think I had formatting on both CIDER and LSP at one point, and they were actually fighting against each other like live in front of me, which was
Yeah. I've seen that happen before. So practically there are less choices because there is less heritage around, and that's why that's one of the reasons for the simpler setup in Neovim.
And I think there's a lot of features added, even to the Clojure part of things. There's a lot of features added because I added some of those, especially in Spacemacs, but I don't really use them, and so yeah, there wasn't really any benefit to kind of running Emacs and Spacemacs, which I still kind of do sometimes. If there's some of the refactoring stuff, like refactoring, if I need to refactor namespaces. That's something I haven't quite cracked in Neovim, but there is a library for that, but it doesn't see. I haven't quite figured that yet. But everything else works really nicely.
Clojure LSP supports it, and you can call Clojure LSP from the command line. I mentioned it in my notes, so I do that in cursive too. It's literally Clojure LSP rename -- from equal blah namespace -- to equal destination namespace, and that's it.
Oh, that's nice. Okay, yeah, I'll give that a try. Thank you. But yeah, so I think it's just it was a new challenge. It was something else to do. One of my friends was using Neovim, and he raved about it, so I give it a try. The first configuration I created was like a Fennel-based one because Fennel is very much like Clojure. But then I moved to Lua because I found it's actually Lua's like really simple as well. And so basically, it's just a data structure that I'm doing. Most of my configuration is just a data structure. Oops, practically. Do Astro. If we have a quick look at this, yeah. So if we look at the Lua plugins, and so if I look at user practically, so this is all my custom stuff here. So you got to switch if you want. If you don't want to use all my custom stuff, you can switch it off. You can basically just set the Practicalli Astro environment variable, or just comment this out. And it's basically just these things, which are basically just maps, but JSON style maps. So you got key value pairs, and the key can be a value, which is also like a data structure. And so it's actually quite easy to kind of write all this stuff, and there's a lot of examples out there that kind of help you do that. So I haven't really had to do too much work. The Astro Vim configuration, I guess, was a big selling point for me because it just does a lot of the hard work that you would do to create your own custom environment. This does it all for you, but still allows you to disable whatever you want as well. So it's quite nice. And there's also an Astro community which adds a whole bunch of extra packages, which I contributed a pack to. Where are the plugin packs? So there's a Clojure plugin pack here, which basically pulls in three packages. So this is like a meta package, a meta plugin. So it pulls in LSP. Well, it basically sets LSP config to include Clojure LSP. So yeah, that's one thing I didn't show actually in here. So you can do you got all the packages. I can update the packages now. I've done the demo and packages. If there is any breaking changes, then so it's basically checking out all the new packages and updating stuff as well. And it gives you a nice kind of list of all the things that have changed, all the commits that have changed. But there's also, so that's updated both the plugins and something called Mason, which also adds in Clojure LSP, so it does your language servers, does your formatting tools, and so on. So you can also do some DAP tools, so debug adapter protocol tools, which is like LSP but for debugging as well. So that's still fairly new, but I can see that becoming as popular as LSP for lots of different tools. And there is a fledgling DAP library for Clojure. Which the Conjure maintainer is developing at the moment. But yeah, so this basically will install stuff for you, so you don't have to install Clojure LSP yourself. It'll update it. So it basically manages all your different formatters and Clojure LSP tools. So it's quite nice. Yeah, and AstroVim, ensures shows all these things are installed. So tree sitter, so it installs a tree sitter Clojure language parser. So every language has its own parser installed for tree sitter, so it knows what to do with it. And then we're installing Conjure and Neovim Parinfer, which is mainly what I was showing. And this is tree sitter SXP, which is like the Neovim version of Vim's Vim SXP S expressions. And so this does the par edit style things there as well. And there's also some comments, so you can do the proper Clojure comments as well. And so all I need to do is just include that in my Clojure. Where is it? Oh, it's there. Where did I put it? Oh, let's open it up in my Neovim. No, I keep doing that. Config. It's true. True. There we go. Boom. Yeah, so you can just do Clojure. I really can't type. There we go. Yeah, so I can just do a single line and it imports that code for me from the Astro NVim community. So this is like the community file. So it's got a whole bunch of extra plugins that I use, all from this Astro NVim community library. And they're just all one-liners to include there as well. You still need to figure out how to actually use it, but it's quite nice.
Quick Lua question. So curly brace is both a vector and a map
maybe
in
let
one?
us do that for later, if that is okay, Tamas.
Yeah, sure.
For this.
Yeah, it's essentially like a kind of a map kind of thing, yeah. But it's got an equal sign in there.
Yeah. John, would you like to say any concluding comments for the recorded part?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, so if you want to know more about Neovim, then Practicalli Neovim gives you a view of how to install Neovim, how to use it, like Neovim basics. So if you want to use it, then you do need to get used to using multi-mode editing, so the Vim style editing. If you don't like that, you won't like Vim or Neovim. But it is a really powerful way and a really fast and efficient way to actually connect to your computer and type in code and move code around as well. So I do encourage you to kind of learn that. It's got all the features of Spacemacs that I used to use. Very lightweight resources to use, and it's just really fun kind of environment to work. And if you want to know more about my Clojure REPL workflow as well, there's a lot more details there specifically for how I do that Clojure REPL with Neovim and Conjure. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Incredible. Yeah, Mike and Tamas and John, thank you so much for for your time and for these amazingly helpful presentations. And please come back anytime you have more to tell. And we will now have very brief announcements, and then we'll stop the recording and keep chatting for those who can stay a little longer. So this is a series and more meetings are coming soon. The next one is in January 15th, and it will be about Flowstorm, the debugger, Clay, the tool for data analysis and testable documentation, and Pulsar, the newish editor, another fork of Atom. And more meetings like that will arrive later. And if anybody has any thought or any proposal for more workflow demos like this, it will be very much welcome. And Cycloj is preparing a few meetup series, one about the R language, another one about large language models. And we will announce these on the Clojure calendar feed and so on. And These days, we are also thinking about organizing a couple of conferences, online conferences, one about Clojure in education, in academia and outside, and another one about Clojure in data analysis. And I'm mentioning it here in this recording because maybe somebody would like to be involved in designing these conferences later this year. And so any idea, any thought, any wish to be involved in making these things happen will be very much welcome. And thank you very much for our speakers and everybody who are helping each other in the chat. And thanks to our listeners, and see you on the next times.